We continue to follow the latest strikes in both Israel and Gaza after Hamas's assault there Saturday. Here's some of the damage in Israel sustained after being struck by a rocket. You can see bombed out cars and ripped up fences. And take a look at the horizon this morning at sunrise in Gaza. You see the plumes of smoke as Israel carries out retaliatory strikes. Joining us now to talk more, Elise Labott and Major Garrett. Elise is founder and editor of Zivi Media. She has extensive history covering conflict in the Middle East. Major is CBS News' chief Washington correspondent. Major, I'm going to start with you. So what happens next? What happens next that may galvanize more attacks and more terrorism?
So we don't know exactly what's going to happen next, but we have a sense of what will probably happen next. Israel has already struck Gaza. It will continue to strike Gaza. The only question is, when does the ground assault begin? Because when the prime minister declares war, that means victory. That doesn't mean defending Israel against rocket attacks or terrorists coming through holes and fences that they create in a surprise maneuver. That means defeating Hamas. What does that mean? That means going into Gaza, a place in which Hamas hides itself among civilians intentionally, rockets from the sky, ground forces, block by block, bitter urban conflict, increasing the possibility of three things. Israeli military personnel being shot and killed in those sniper attacks, and hostages. There are already 150 hostages. So that's the military side of it. Then the psychological warfare side. There will be the hostages, American possibly, and Israelis, paraded in front of camera. Hamas has threatened to maybe execute them on camera. All of this will be digested by the world, Western and otherwise. Hamas will use that for galvanizing propagandistic effect. Israel fears that enormously, doesn't want to be compromised or deterred because of the fear of that, but it will be a calculation nonetheless. We are, in the next 48 to 72 hours, heading to some very grim realities and visuals.
What strikes so many people is not just the magnitude of death and hostage taking, it's the images. It's the visceral nature of what people are seeing. Is that by design? Is that something that was strategized?
Oh, it's very much by design. I mean, and now in the age of social media, when you see these videos of these families running for their lives or being kidnapped and put into a truck and taken away or slaughtered, and you see, everyone's putting a video online. I mean, it's whole, as the prime minister said, whole families being killed in an instant. It's very much for that shock value. And we've heard it before. This is, and when you look at the equivalent in terms of population, this is the Israeli 9/11. And population-wise, it's about 33,000 Americans being killed. It's a big shock to the Israeli psyche right now.
One of the IDF spokesmen said today that more Jewish people died Saturday than since the Holocaust.
Yeah.
We need to pause for a second and think about that. More Jewish people died Saturday than since the Holocaust. That is something Israel can never forget. And this is also something that will not just speak to Israel's security future. Hamas made a direct attack on Israel's economic future, its ability to attract foreign investment, its ability to suggest itself as a place of safety, of business, of commerce, of efficacy. All of this is now up for grabs in a way that has shocked Israel to its core.
One of the things John Kirby mentioned was that there are hostages. He knows it. There's Americans. He knows it. They don't know how many. They don't know where. What is it like trying to extract hostages from this type of warfare? I mean, is this different than a different type of POW mission?
Oh, it's going to be really difficult. And they know that. And you've seen the Israelis, one hostage, when you remember Gilad Shalit, it took them 5 years, but they never gave up trying to get them. There are going to be some real difficult conversations, and the Israeli soldiers that are going to be going in to rescue these people, once they can get the intelligence about trying to find out where they are.
But they'd go in for the Americans. The Israelis would go in.
They'll go in
to
for
be
all
determined.
of them. They're not gonna. They're gonna go in for all of them. They're not. They're not gonna say we're gonna go for one Israeli hostage and we're not going to go for the Americans. They're going to try and go for all of those hostages, and some of those hostages are soldiers. But you've seen that, this is a very delicate situation right now because Hamas has said for every Israeli strike, we're going to kill some of your hostages. And so how do you make that calculation? I don't think it's going to deter, and we've been talking about what's going to happen. Not only is we thinking about a ground invasion, but I don't think it's impossible to imagine that you're going to see a wholesale reoccupation by the Israelis of Gaza. This is what the chatter is in Israel right now. This is what the Israelis, after leaving in 2005 and saying we want to disengage from Gaza, we want to disengage from the Palestinians and moving in that direction. You're talking about a reoccupation of the territory because, as Major said, this is, the kind of carnage that we've seen is unparalleled in Israeli history, and this is going to mean a response unlike anything. This is a massive game changer.
And that's only if things stay as they are. We don't know what Hezbollah is going to do in Lebanon to the north. We don't know what Israel is contemplating with Iran. All of this has many other dimensions, as yet unexplored, almost all of them lethal and destabilizing.
What do you think this means for Netanyahu? Either the intelligence failure that clearly occurred or his response so far?
Mm-hmm. Well, there is an existential threat to Israel right now, the largest since 1973. So there will be a rallying, and there's already talk of a unity government. The Prime Minister has asked for it. Those outside the government have agreed to participate in a temporary unity government. But there are extremist right-wing nationalistic factions in the existing Netanyahu coalition that want to occupy all of the West Bank, make that settlements for Israelis. That's destabilizing to the entire Palestinian equation. Netanyahu's got to wrestle those forces to the ground if he's going to have any kind of functioning unity government of purpose and resoluteness. So he has some decisions to make. Yes, there'll be a rallying, but one of the reasons this has gotten to the place it's gotten is because this is the most nationalistic government Israel has ever had. And it's of deep and abiding concern to Palestinians who are not members of Hamas. And we have to distinguish between the two. And Netanyahu is going to have to make some choices.
I don't know that his government can survive. I mean, look, Netanyahu has been the security prime minister, right? That this is the guy, this is really his only value, that he's going to be able to deliver security for Israel, and largely he has. I mean, there have been skirmishes over the last many years.
But nothing like this.
But nothing like this. If Netanyahu, the Israelis are saying to themselves, if Netanyahu can't protect us right now, who can? And I think there's really a gut check right now among the Israelis who have already been going through he has really destroyed the whole fabric of society during his reign, and this move to the right, and this, there's been not just about the Palestinians, but the role of religious in the country, the role of the Supreme Court, the role of the Orthodox. The Israelis were already having, a lot of existential issues right now. This is only going to add to that, and I'm not sure that his government survives.
Elise Labott, Major Garrett, great insights. Sadly, we'll have more to unpack later in the week.